Welcome in, philosophy students. I am the Lore Keeper, and today we're diving into a profoundly dark, yet honestly incredibly liberating explainer. We're going to be stepping directly into the grim and shadowed world of the Mercurial Legendarium to witness a massive philosophical evolution. Together, we'll examine this harrowing but absolutely vital pivot from cosmic nihilism straight into absolute interior sovereignty. We're going to see exactly how the soul gets stripped of all its reliance on external institutions and how it's forced into the terrifying, beautiful act of self-mastered creation.
So here's our syllabus for today's session. We'll be covering the fall of objective truth, the void as a workshop, yellow Mercury and shadows, the relic of sovereignty, and finally, the awakened mercurial spirit. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the fall of objective truth, illustrated by the parable of the ruined telephone. Now picture this scene. The Baron, our great architect of negation, is walking through the crumbling ruins of the Iron City during what's known as the Second Sloughing. To really grasp his grim work here, we have to define epistemological dissolution. And listen, this isn't just some political collapse. We are talking about the absolute, total collapse of external meaning. The great star of negation is casting this cold anti-light, and it's literally stripping away the illusion that our states, our bureaucratic logic, or our religious institutions hold any inherent truth at all. It's a terrifying necessity, really. It forces the soul to completely abandon its reliance on those institutions and dig deep for a purely internal foundation. And the Baron? He's actively orchestrating this, just laughing at the scholars who are desperately clutching their dying scrolls.
As the Baron walks through these ruins, with his iron staff striking the stones like a tolling bell, he spots one of these scholars. And the Baron's voice drops into this chilling, hyper-precise whisper. He says, "All human knowledge is merely a game of ruined telephone played over the graves of ancestors who are now only silence." The Baron perfectly understands that our grand ideas of history, philosophy, and poetry are really nothing more than a fragile layer of paint applied to a universe that doesn't even know our names. Think about your own certainties for a second, students. How much of what you so fiercely believe is just a game of ruined telephone passed down by forgotten voices?
Back in the Iron City, men naively believed their sturdy towers of logic were going to stand forever. But the great star of negation proves that literally every human declaration, all our laws, our most cherished histories, they were all just assumptions built on sand. As that fragile paint of a recorded history starts to peel away, it leaves absolutely nothing behind but blank white vellum. The external certainty is completely dismantled, and the universe is revealed as gloriously, terrifyingly empty.
Moving on to section 2. The void as a workshop, which we'll explore through the parable of the scavenger's workshop. As the lore keeper, I have to confess something to you. I actually once wept for these rotting, heroic ideals. I watched those sturdy towers fall and I just despaired. But the bard, who was wandering the ashen wastes right alongside me, he totally mocked my tears. He looked at the exact same wreckage and saw this incredibly stark contrast between the old world and the new. Look at the old world. Humanity was living in this suffocating conformity, essentially acting as biological machines, relying on objective truth. But the new world? That offers a blank white vellum. It demands a self-mastered creator. The bard realizes he's no longer bound by the herd. He is completely free to achieve subjective, interior sovereignty.
So the bard trades his flute for a key, one forged out of the cold silence of an abandoned prayer. And when he enters the terrifying, totally structureless void of the uncanny valley, he doesn't cower like those scholars did before the Baron, not at all. Instead, his voice rings out with this triumphant defiance. He declares, the uncanny valley is not a place of terror, but a vast inkwell for my next great deception. He fully embraces the cold silence. He's using the fundamental void as his own personal workshop, daring to write his own truth and becoming the absolute master of his own reality.
Let's step into section 3. Yellow Mercury and shadows, grounded in the parable of the honest heir.
We now travel to the village of Weimar, where the air has become so honest that the old laws of priests and magistrates just buckle into meaningless noise. The Baron is standing at the zenith, watching humanity's projected divine spark return to the void. But here's the critical question. How does an individual actually survive this total dissolution without just being completely consumed by the emptiness? Well, the answer is yellow Mercury. This is the fluid intellect. It's an alchemical catalyst that actually empowers the sovereign individual to integrate their own internal shadows. It is literally the vital substance you need to survive the collapse of the old world and begin building the new one. Halfway down the dead mountain, even the Baron is forced to stop in his tracks. His perfect, cold negation meets an obstacle it simply cannot destroy. Through a single window lit with an amber rectangle, I observe this fascinating sideways step in the lore. I noted, the divine spark returns to the void, but in the amber window she is mixing yellow. This amber light is completely indifferent to the Baron's precise destruction. It represents that exact, critical pivot where absolute negation halts, and the fluid intellect begins the quiet, relentless work of internal creation.
Which brings us to Section 4, the relic of sovereignty, depicted in the parable of the shepherd's relic. At first light, a shepherd ascends a mountain that is now finished and empty, holding absolutely nothing left for the architect of negation to destroy. And this journey maps out the exact mechanism of the reclamation. Let's break it down. Step 1 is the interior turn. Since all external institutions have failed, you have to descend into your own psychological depths. Step 2 is the alchemical catalyst. That's where you're mixing that yellow mercury to integrate your shadows. And finally, step 3 is the shift from machine to architect. This is where you officially reclaim the divine spark from external states and start writing your own reality directly onto the blank vellum.
Up at the very top of that finished mountain, resting right on the gray ash where the Baron once stood, is a single object, a burning lamp. As I recorded in the lore, it is a stubborn vestige of the sovereign soul abandoned at the edge of the void. And you guys, it is the ultimate symbol. This single lamp marks the exact threshold where absolute negation finally ends and absolute internal authority begins. It is the proof that the sovereign spirit has been fully reclaimed from the ruins of the old world.
And finally, Section 5, the awakened mercurial spirit, the sole architect of existence.
This brings us to the terminal stage of our entire timeline. We started out trapped in the era of sturdy towers, totally sedated by the illusion of objective meaning. Then came the second sloughing, that brutal epistemological dissolution brought down by the Baron. That destruction forced the reclamation, the deep interior turn, and the mixing of yellow mercury that the bards so gleefully embraced. And all of this pain and unmaking culminates in the birth of the awakened mercurial spirit. The soul is no longer just some biological machine reading off a ruined telephone. It stands completely in the silence of the universe, possessing absolute, undeniable internal authority.
So students of philosophy, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to see that this Gothic fable leaves us not with despair, but with a profoundly terrifying empowerment. The sturdy towers have already fallen, the external laws are just meaningless noise now. You are the self-mastered creator. So look closely at the blank white vellum of this silent universe. What truth will your sovereign spirit dare to write?